Furnishing.
Now, from The Signature, a division of Esquire Bank Studios.
This hour of The Shaun Thompson Show is sponsored exclusively by DonleyAuctions.com. They need your guns. Sell for top dollar. DonleyAuctions.com.
From the streets of Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc, he's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Shaun Thompson. And this is the Shaun Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue.
Now you're worried about the debt.
And when the band plays hail to the chief,
all of a sudden, everybody, oh my God, the debt. How did we get here?
$40 trillion is a lot of money. So much, it's hard to wrap your head around it. It's more than $117,000 per person in this country. Or if you were to take dollar bills and stack them, you'd get to the moon not once, but 10 times.
Welcome to reality, morons. We've been ringing the bell since Barack Obama told you his wife was pretty.
There's a table on page 26 which consists of your balance sheet. And one of the entries on the balance sheet is under assets, central bank liquidity swaps, which shows an increase from the end of 2007 from $24 billion to $553 billion in change at the end of 2008. What's that?
Those are swaps that were done with foreign central banks. Many foreign banks are short dollars. And so they come into our markets looking for dollars and drive up interest rates and create volatility in our markets. What we have done is, with a number of major central banks, like the European Central Bank, for example, we swap our currency, dollars, for their currency, euros. They take the dollars, lend it out to the banks in their jurisdiction. That helps bring down interest rates in the global market for dollars. And meanwhile, we're not lending to those banks. We're lending to the central bank. The central bank is responsible for repaying us.
So who got the money?
To financial institutions in Europe and other countries.
Which ones?
I don't know.
Who got us here? Morons. Whether they were Republicans or Democrats. You know who said that this morning, Squirrel? I could have swore it was Vincent Price. Handsome as the day is long. I thought I was ready to watch a scary movie. Instead, just scary facts. By a doctor of economics, handsome as the day is long, smarter than anybody who's been on TV. E.J. Antoni, handsome devil. How are you?
Shaun, every week you manage to outdo yourself. Seriously, these intros are so over the top. I love it.
Well, did you see this morning when I tweeted the picture of you, also Vincent Price? You have the Van Dyke. You got to go with the goatee. Did you see? Now, come on now. We're going to change the facial hair.
I did. I saw the tweet. I loved it. Absolutely loved it, sir.
But I also loved what you had to say because you didn't let anybody off the hook. You want to know how we got here? Morons and frauds faking an economy rather than facing the reality of what had happened through policy. They covered up the bad policy, and they continue to do it to this day, and they blame Donald Trump, who just got there.
Yeah, exactly, Shaun. I mean, a few metrics, I think, really illustrate that very, very clearly. Take something like the S&P and just divide it by the size of the Fed's balance sheet, and all of a sudden you realize that so much of the supposed growth that we had, especially during those Obama years, it was nothing but money printing. It was a devaluation of the dollar. It just took more dollars to buy the same stuff. That's not an increase in wealth. It's part of the reason why people were so dissatisfied during the Great Recession, why it even got that name of the Great Recession, named after the Great Depression. So although we couldn't necessarily check all the boxes to say, yep, this is a depression in an economic sense, or an academic sense, I suppose, people still felt really, really bad. People felt horrible. And then same thing in the Biden years, worse so then. You know, no matter how many times the Biden administration told folks, don't believe your lying eyes, don't believe your empty wallets, everything's fine, inflation's not bad, it was all absolute nonsense, and the American people knew that. It didn't matter, Shaun, and I know you and I have talked about this a lot, so forgive me for repeating myself, but it didn't matter that the official inflation metrics said the cost of home ownership, or at least their proxy for it, only increased by about 20 or 21% during Biden's 4 years. Now, that's a really bad increase, right, in just 4 years. But that's just how the government measures it. That's the statistic. In reality, if you look at the monthly mortgage payment on a median price home, it literally doubled during Biden's 4 years in office. So, yeah, people were upset. Yeah, growth was lousy. It was not the real economy. It was just government statistics and insiders. Those were the things that looked really, really good for those 4 years.
Now, I'm going to tell you, you know this about me, and I think that's why you and I are friends. I am not a team player. I'm not, and I will never be a team player, especially when the team is playing to lose. And that's what the Republicans play to do. They play to lose. These are the Republicans that rubber stamp this nonsense and put up very little arguments. So today, I see a Republican congressman who came out of nowhere. He's got a very complicated last name, and he starts talking about what Donald Trump has added to the debt per second. And it's a very interesting way in which he did it, because he includes the 87% of mandatory spending. And what he leaves out is that Joe Biden, in 4 years, spent $277,270.77 a second for 50 months. For 50 months. That moron and the Democrats, regardless of any revenue and all the rest of their bulldung, that's what these idiots spent in 4 years. It's never been done. In fact, it only increased because Barack Obama spent half that over the course of 8 years. So when you talk about spending, the idea that we're supposed to ticky-tack entitlements, insurance, policies, green energy, this is a government that has zero restraint. It doesn't know where it's spending the money. In fact, it can't spend it fast enough, and Republicans and Democrats only want to spend more unless it's about Donald Trump. Then all the rubber stamp Republicans, all of a sudden, they're Milton Friedman. That's annoying.
Shaun, let's not forget, to your point now, right? Let's not forget the crazy infrastructure bill, so-called infrastructure, which actually, fun fact, it paid to destroy more miles of roadway in this country than pave. That's not an exaggeration. Anybody can fact check that. You can look it up. All the info is available online. Because of that bill, we are going to tear up more miles of highway than we're actually going to build. So that's how good of an infrastructure bill it was. But I digress. That infrastructure bill did not get passed through, it did not get rammed through reconciliation the way Obamacare did, right? That got passed through regular order, which means they needed the extra majority, not just the simple majority in the Senate. So to get those 60 votes, they needed Republicans, obviously. Republicans were on board with that. It is not as if all of the crazy multi-trillion-dollar spending bills during the Biden administration were simply the work of him and the Democrats, just, again, ramming everything through Congress. To your point, so many of these Republicans are just as bad on the spending front. And so how did we get here? We got here because Democrats are horrible and Republicans are not quite as bad. And that's basically the way these parties operate on spending. Look at, and it's not just during the Biden years. Look at what has happened during the Trump years now, where the executive branch basically handed on a silver platter to Congress. They handed them all the DOGE cuts, right? They found literally hundreds of billions of dollars in abuse, corruption, fraud, and waste throughout that federal budget. Because like you said, Shaun, just these little, trims here and there to different entitlements, that's not going to get you anywhere. You need big, significant cuts. And that's what the DOGE boys produced. And so they hand this to Congress on a silver platter and say, all you got to do is enshrine this into law. There is literally, and this just blows my mind every time I think about it, Shaun, there are literally parts of the budget where even if a project, some kind of spending gets done and it is ahead of schedule and under budget, Congress still has to, they have essentially directed these different agencies and whatnot, that money has to be spent. Think of that. You literally have to waste the money if you figure out how to do a project under budget and ahead of schedule. And so DOGE gives all this to Congress and says, just make these cuts. It's super simple. and Congress won't do it. And it's not because the Democrats refused to get on board. Of course they did, but it's because they couldn't even get enough Republicans on board to get a simple majority in both houses of Congress. Don't talk to me about how Republicans are the party of fiscal discipline. They clearly are not.
So baseline budgeting is a crime, and that's what you're referring to. It's actually a rule. And once they do that, they not only get to spend exactly what they spent the year before, they get 3% interest, an increase. And then you're going to talk to me all of a sudden about inflation, and they're going to marry it to the one guy who never was a congressman who voted for this, who never was a senator who voted for this. They're going to go to the one guy who's trying to grow out of it, and they negate the history of his own administration the first term. He has the 2017 tax cuts, the record revenue to the government, 2018, 2019, 2020. Record revenue until Joe Biden steals the election and shuts the country down. So we have the fact of what happens when you give the producers, known as the decent, their own money, citizens and corporations. The revenue actually increases. So even if they wanted to fix this, they would say we're going to number one, we're going to eliminate the $1.2 trillion that the fraud clock has exposed through implementing the Doge cuts to the fraud. Just the fraud, $1.2 trillion. And aside from that, we're going to end baseline budgeting, and we're going to capitalize on the big, beautiful bill, because that's going to do the exact same thing 2017 did. And it's going to drive up more revenue. We're going to take every penny of that, and we're going to put it on the principle to knock it down. Not only that, we're going to call in all the foreign money that Bernanke put out, and we still don't know where it is. I played you that Bernanke clip from 2009. They do not know where the fracking money is, and they never accounted for it. Ever. That's a Republican.
No, and Shaun, what's really amazing is that kind of thing still goes on today. If we remember back to the spring of 2023, when you had Silicon Valley Bank collapsing, right? And you had several other institutions, you had different regional banks that were either under pressure or actually just went under entirely, went out of business. Well, the Fed essentially came up with a whole new lending facility. They called it the Bank Term Funding Program, as I'm sure you remember. And the way that actually worked was similar, not exactly the same, but it was similar to the swaps that Bernanke was talking about, insofar as it wasn't always clear where the money was going. And it's not just a matter of it wasn't disclosed to the public, although that's true. It won't be disclosed for several years, which, I mean, imagine being an investor and you don't know if the bank you're investing in is taking out an emergency loan from the Fed. How is that fair? But whatever. That's the way that they've established this. But even in certain instances, particularly when foreigners were involved, the Fed themselves don't always know. It's still happening today with what's left of the reverse repo market, which is not big. It's gotten very, very small because of what's happening currently with interest rates. But you still, again, have this same pattern of behavior where the financial system has run amok and it no longer serves the American people. That should be the biggest case for reform. It's the fact that the American financial system doesn't serve the American people. Instead, it serves a bunch of elites, a lot of whom aren't even in this country. And again, if you look at something like the reverse repo market, I think that's a great example in recent years of this point, that at certain points, not every day, Shaun, but at certain points in the last several years, over 90% of what was getting paid out in terms of reverse repos, because those are daily interest payments, right?
Yep.
Over 90% of what was getting paid out wasn't even going to American banks, it was going to foreign ones.
And this is what I want to talk to you about, our sissy cousins to the north. That if Canada had a name and it was part of our family, it would be Ruprecht from Dirty Rotten Scoundrels with the cork on his fork so he didn't poke his own eye out. And Carney, this swindler bastard Carney, who was the head of their Federal Reserve Bank and Europe, London, right? England. He was the head of he's the only person to be the head of two Federal Reserve Light, they're called federal something in Canada and the same thing in Europe. He got the money. And they run this fraud scam with the tariffs that no American wanted to talk about. And all of a sudden, Trump's in a trade war. Canada's bankrupt. Canada's a front. And what is their GDP? 2.1 trillion or 1.9? So it's like, the market cap on Microsoft or Apple or one of our top 5 companies, and they make less than 4 of our states do as far as GDP. The highest bankruptcies in Canada are not 2009. It's right now. Canada is running a financial crime, and we've been bailing it out. We don't even know it. We don't even talk about it. And instead, financial papers talk about a trade war. Trade war. Where's the fracking money that we've been giving them that they've been fronting to use as their base, as their bottom line, as their backer? You know, there's a big problem when this is not disclosed. The trillions of dollars that have gone out the door since 2009, and you're going to tell me Carney's not neck deep in that? I'm speculating, but I'm a speculator.
Yeah, no, Shaun, it's a great point. And look, a lot of folks think of Canada as just, like our friendly neighbor to the north or America's little brother or whatever the case may be. But the fact is, in terms of trade, Canada has been a really bad actor, especially in recent years. We forget that so much of the products that come from China, where they abuse different country of origin provisions, so much of that actually gets funneled not through Mexico, but through Canada. Mexico has surprisingly been a very good partner since Trump got back into office. We still don't have enough financing for Border Patrol to actually secure the border. The reason the border is secure is partly due to the fact that Trump threatened Mexico to help us with the border. Mexico stepped up and did that, and that made the border secure. It wasn't simply just all the work on the America end. Conversely, again, with Canada for years now has allowed China to send countless products to Canada, and then that stuff gets repackaged, relabeled, and reshipped into the United States. And so something that says made in Canada wasn't. It was made in China. And sometimes they'll do this trick where they say final assembly, right? You've seen that on some products, or assembled in Canada. No, in reality, it actually still all came from China, but they just slap that label on, call it good, and send it into the United States, all to get around the tariffs that are put on those Chinese products. Furthermore, if you look at something like the dairy lobby in Canada, that has a ridiculous amount of influence in Ottawa. That is a group that seriously punches above their weight. It's this very small portion of the overall Canadian economy, which, as you were just saying, the overall economy isn't even that big. But somehow the dairy lobby has completely captured the government there. And so when the United States says, look, we want our dairy products to be able to come in to your country without all of these tariff and non-tariff barriers in the way, that lobby has thrown a fit, and they're not solely responsible, but they're actually largely responsible for these talks getting blown up. And just to illustrate the power of that lobby, milk in Canada is like 10 or 20% more expensive than it is here in the United States. And the reason for that is because their industry is completely isolated from American competition. And so even though there are a lot of different areas in their supply chain where they actually have lower costs than we do, that dairy lobby just will not allow any foreign competition, including just south of the border in the United States. It really is astonishing. But again, Canada, just to emphasize, they have not been a good partner here. They have not been an honest broker. It's a shame that the trade talks and everything have broken down. It's a shame that we got to go down this road of getting into this tariff tit for tat. But at the end of the day, we definitely are in a better position, Shaun, right? Even with the Iran war, even with the higher costs that we're seeing there, people don't realize what is it? It's something like 80% of Canadian exports come here to the United States. And then it's only like 10%, actually less than that, of our exports that go to Canada. If exports between the two nations really do truly grind to a halt, that is going to really, really hurt their economy much more than it will ours, especially when you consider the fact that exports are a much larger part of the Canadian economy than they are here in the United States. So it really is a double whammy.
And they're more of, like you said, they're more of an Amazon distribution warehouse for Chinese products than they are employing their own people. And the proof is in their own people and the massive record-setting bankruptcies, delinquencies, credit card debt. They're not helping their own people. And I'm going to tell you something, EJ. This is back to Pierre, not Justin. not the son, the father. The father is the one that had the relationship with Mao Zedong, and they orchestrated this hollowing out of their own economy in the idea of protectionism and financing from big bad imperial power America and the rest of it. This is a scheme. And Donald Trump's the only one to ever even talk about it, let alone take it on. And when you look at what these Democrats have done with help of the Chinese from Chicago to New York to California, they've done the same thing that they did with Chinese politicians. China has corrupted the politician, the party, to orchestrate the policy that bankrupts America, puts Americans out of work. It's a beautiful time to recognize this. And I don't think the people who are running for office on the Republican side are smart enough to talk about it. Do you?
No, Shaun, it's a great point. They really aren't. I mean, I'm shocked at how frequently, I go in to talk to legislators or their staff in D.C., and these folks just don't seem to understand some very, very basic issues, including, shockingly, issues that those people are getting in front of a camera and talking about themselves. And then you realize, oh, my goodness, so many of these folks just have talking points memorized from
that's
their
all
staff,
it is.
and that's all they know to talk about. And we're actually, I think, hearing some of that from the so-called leaders out of Canada these days, where you notice they're just kind of reciting the same rote talking points, but they're not addressing the elephant in the room of China, of the fact that they're allowing China to come into their country and gut their industry in real time, resulting in a lot of those bankruptcies that you're talking about, Shaun. It's amazing. They're completely moot on that point.
It reminds me of Illinois and the Illinoisans who are good people and trapped there, like our listeners. It reminds me of that so much in my interactions with Canadians down here. And it's the first time I realized just what slaves you are if you're a Canadian. Did you know you cannot be out of country for a certain set of time, whether it's 6 months or a year, whatever it is? They have to go back, even if it's for a day, to report. I mean, you want to talk, am I a citizen or a slave? And you look at the ingrained servitude that Canada puts in their own people and the mindset where they have them cheering against themselves. Next to listening to a transvestite Democrat from Chicago, Cook County, it's terrible to hear. And I'll never forget, EJ, you'll love this story. I had this big fat slob of a guy, Canadian, and he would be in the building where I live now. His name was Claude, big fat ass. And he didn't like Trump. I don't like Trump, with that stupid French accent that they had. And so Trump wins, and he says, I'm going to make you the 51st state. Well, Claude says, and he was all vaccinated. He would walk around with the mask. You could always tell a Democrat or a Canadian in Florida. They're the only imbeciles that have a mask on in Florida. And he says to me, I am not coming back to Florida. You show him, Claude. I just want to get him away from the pool as he lowers property values. He's like a manatee on poolside. So he gets up there, Claude dies, right? He has the clot shot, whatever. He was on 15 boosters, dead. So everybody writes in the thing, because the building people are civilized, oh, it's a shame, Claude, our deepest wishes. And I said, well, Claude was right. He told me he wasn't coming back to Florida. Now he's not coming back. He's dead. And that's exactly how I feel about Canadians that don't understand they've cheered for their own destruction, let alone mine. You ain't doing me any favor, brother. Get the hell out of here. What do you think?
Well, maybe if he had the American healthcare system instead of the Canadian healthcare system, he would have lived longer. Tragically, how many Canadians, Shaun, die because they're literally waiting for something as simple as an X-ray, and they're put on months. They're put on a months-long wait list, whereas in the United States, they can walk into a doctor's office and get it the same day.
Yeah, it's still safer than waiting for an Uber on the south side of Chicago. EJ Antoni, I understand you're coming. You're still going to come into town. I know you got a lot of moving parts in your own personal life, but you're still going to make it on Friday.
I am stoked, Shaun. I'm really looking forward to it,
brother. Don't you even work? Just cigar arguing. You're going to have the time of your life. There's going to be a lot of good people there. Can't wait to see you on Friday.
Likewise, looking forward to it, Shaun.
Thank you, brother. We'll be back with your calls and comments.
He's Shaun Thompson.
Hello, Mr. Thompson.
And this is the Shaun Thompson Show on AM 560. The Answer.
Business owners, you gotta love summer in Chicago, but you hate to paint, so do what Al did. He called Rhino Shield.
The building itself is made out of concrete block. We've had it painted once before, and I heard the ads for Rhino Shield, and that piqued my interest.
Rhino Shield's not paint, it's a ceramic coating, which is better.
So the Rhino Shield crew that came